Hi there and welcome to the Mental Toughness Minute. I'm Dr. Jo Lukens and this is part of a series of short videos designed to give some tips and tricks for managing some of those everyday circumstances we can find ourselves in that can impact our performance, and some things that we can do so that we feel like we have the mastery and build the confidence we need to get on with what we're doing and to bring ourselves closer to success. So this video is actually focusing on that age-old scenario we can find ourselves in, which is when someone, perhaps they ask you a question or ask you to do something, you find yourself in a meeting and you feel like you're on the spot, and of course your mind goes blank. So we know that with the stress and the pressure of what can happen in those scenarios, if we've got some skills that we can use to manage that moment, then we'll do it with a lot more confidence and we'll get closer to the outcome that we want. So we're going to look at three quick little pointers that can help us to manage those situations far more effectively. So the first one that we've got there is to bring in a pause. And it's so often with so many of these strategies that our starting point for success is to take a breath. And the reason why that's so important, the reason why it's so important to pause, is because that allows us a little bit of space, a little bit of time to gather our thoughts. It also allows us physically, when we take that breath, take that pause, to lower our physiological arousal and reaction, so that if we can calm ourselves down a little bit, then that brings us much closer to being able to think more clearly. So I would always use the pause. I do that when I'm presenting, if I'm giving a presentation, and you get some great questions in presentations. So I might pause. I might gaze off to the left or the right, because people know you're thinking when you're doing that. And through that pause, I might even say, that's a really great question. Let me just have a think about that. And I might stop and I might think. I might actually say that that's what I need to do, because what that's actually doing is honouring the question. When you get asked a great question, and I've even been in some scenarios in presentations where I've said, I'll give you an answer now, but I'd also like to give that some more considered thought. So I'll circle back to you after the break or next week or whatever it might be, so that you do have the luxury to give yourself permission to think a little bit more about it. So that pause can be really helpful. It's a sign of confidence when you do that. And if you're doing something like a job interview, it's actually demonstrating a skill. It's saying that you don't always respond straight away to everything, that you do pause and think and give consideration. So it's actually a great skill to have. The second thing that I think can be really helpful is to shift your thinking from performance to service. What do I mean by that? When we are giving ourselves the story that we are under performance here, I'm performing on stage. I do a lot of speaking, so I'm performing on stage. What often goes hand in hand with that is increased elevations of arousal, whether that be the thoughts that we have or what our body's doing for us. And so any wonder that there are times when we can feel a little bit anxious or nervous about that. Performances, by their very nature, can bring about anxiety, which is helpful, but at the time, probably not so helpful when it comes to generating our thinking. So one of the things I find really helpful is I think less about the fact that I am here to perform when I'm in a work setting, and I think more about the fact that I'm here to serve. I'm here to help. So it's not that I'm on stage performing, but it's about that I have an audience of people who want my help, who want my insights on whatever the thing might be. And when you think about that, when you think, well, I'm just here to help somebody, the person's asked me the question because they want my help. Maybe someone comes up to you and you were in a meeting with them and they say, look, I noticed when I raised that point, whatever it is, that you hesitated. So is there something else you're thinking about there? In that instance, someone's asking you for your help. And that might be a good example to lead us into the third point, which is a scenario of questions that I also find really useful as like a little template for lots of situations, particularly if my mind goes blank. And that's where I ask myself, well, what is happening? What just happened? So what does that mean? And now what do I need to do? So say, for example, if Fred comes up to you after the meeting and says, I noticed that you hesitated when I raised that point, is there some feedback you want to give me? And you weren't expecting that question. And so at that moment, you feel a little bit stunned or you're not really sure what to say. So I might use the template and say, and I may or may not use the words in the actual answer that I give someone, but I will just to demonstrate this, how it works. So I might say something like, what was happening for me at the time was I was thinking about your idea and how it might actually work. So what that meant for me is I was thinking about the budget element that you talked about and was wondering what the assumptions were that sat behind it and how that might work. Now what I'd like to do is maybe sit down with you this afternoon when I've had a bit more time to think about it. So it's what's happening in the moment. So what does that mean? Now what needs to happen next? And it doesn't matter whether you are coming out of a boardroom, whether you are speaking to the media because you've just run a race. All of those instances lend themselves really well to this what, so what, now what? What's been happening? So what does that mean? Now what do I need to do or think? So I find that a really, really helpful scenario. And I even find that as a scenario when I'm reflecting for myself after something that's happened. So it's a really good little template. So you might want to have a bit of a play with that. I hope that what I've covered today gives you some ideas about what to do when your mind goes blank. Know that it happens for so many people, so you are certainly not alone, but there are those strategies, as I mentioned, that can be helpful. If you'd like to find out some more information on the topics that I speak to, and this one particular topic, there is a radio interview in my see, I've just gone blank, on my Locker Room podcast. That's what I was trying to say. And I'm not even going to edit this out because, we all have the blank moments and it's okay. It's okay that I momentarily forgot the name of my own podcast. There's about 300 episodes sitting in there. So there's lots of topics if you'd like to have a listen to those. If you'd like to receive my newsletter, if you didn't get this link through the newsletter, if you've just found us through YouTube, I do have a newsletter that comes out once a month if you'd like to have a look at that. The website's there, or maybe you might like to read one of my books and to give you some more insights into how potentially some of the ideas that I work in can help you get closer to the goals that you're trying to achieve. Hope to see you in the next video.